Brothers and sisters, it's a blessing to connect with you today. I don't know what you've been facing, but I do know this: God is still speaking and He's still moving. And today He's calling us back to something simple but powerful: obedience. Too often, we delay our obedience because we're obsessed with outcomes. We want to know how it will happen, when it will happen, and what the result will look like. But faith doesn't work like that. Faith is trust without proof. It's moving when God says go, even if you don't have the full picture. Abraham didn't know where he was going. Noah had never seen rain. Mary had no idea how she'd carry the Savior. But they obeyed, and God delivered the outcome. Obedience is powerful because it aligns you with God's divine strategy. It's not about what you feel ready for. It's about being willing. You don't have to understand everything. You just have to trust the one who does. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. When God speaks, move. Let's stop negotiating with God about the cost of our calling. Obedience isn't always convenient. It will stretch you. It might separate you. But hear me, obedience will never leave you empty. The outcome may not come instantly, but it will come perfectly when God delivers it in His time. You're not responsible for opening every door. You're responsible for knocking on the one God told you to knock on. When you obey, even in uncertainty, even in fear, even in weakness, God begins to move mountains behind the scenes. Your act of faith activates divine favor. Look at Joshua. God said, "March around Jericho." It didn't make sense. There were no battle weapons, just marching and obedience. And what happened? On the seventh day, the walls fell. Not by might, not by logic, not by human strategy, but through obedience and God's outcome. We have to stop measuring success by visible results. Kingdom success is measured by faithfulness, not flash. Noah looked crazy building that ark. Daniel looked reckless praying when it was illegal. The 3 Hebrew boys looked doomed for refusing to bow. But guess what? Obedience wrote their victory. Don't let culture or convenience pull you away from God's command. You don't need to be popular. You need to be obedient. You don't need to be seen. You need to be sent. God doesn't need your plan. He needs your yes. He doesn't bless perfection. He blesses obedience. Some of you are so focused on doing it right that you haven't done it at all. But the power is not in having it all figured out. The power is in trusting the one who already knows the outcome. Jesus told Peter, cast your net on the other side. Peter had fished all night. He had nothing to show for it. But when he obeyed the word, even after failure, the net overflowed. The miracle didn't happen because of Peter's effort. It happened because of his obedience. What is God calling you to do today? Start the ministry, forgive the person, apply for the job again, move to the unfamiliar, speak the truth, step out in faith. You may not see the whole picture, but if God said it, obey Him. The outcome is not your business. Think about Ananias in Acts 9. God told him to go and lay hands on Saul, the same Saul who persecuted the church. That didn't make sense in the natural. But because Ananias obeyed, Saul became Paul, the apostle who wrote most of the New Testament. You never know who your obedience will unlock. Stop trying to play God. You're not responsible for controlling people, changing situations, or predicting the future. You're called to obey, to trust, to walk by faith, not by sight. God takes care of the outcome, and He never fails. Sometimes we think obedience will lead to comfort, applause, or quick results, but Jesus obeyed all the way to the cross. Yet through His obedience, salvation came to the world. So even if obedience costs you something, trust that the outcome will glorify God and bless others. When you say yes to God, even in trembling faith, heaven moves. You might not feel brave. You might not feel equipped. But obedience isn't about how strong you are. It's about how surrendered you are. God uses yielded vessels, not perfect ones. Don't miss your miracle because you're waiting for certainty. Obedience often feels risky, but it's the safest place to be, inside God's will. Risky obedience will always produce supernatural results. It might take time, but God's outcomes are always worth the wait. Obedience often feels lonely because it's a narrow road. The crowd may not understand your decision to follow God's voice. But hear this, divine instructions are not given by committee. They come from the throne room. You don't need everyone to approve your obedience. You just need God's confirmation. Some of you are in a place where obedience looks like staying when you want to run. For others, it looks like leaving when you want to stay. Obedience is different for everyone, but it always requires the same thing: surrender. Not my will, Lord, but yours be done. Don't get discouraged if obedience feels like you're going backward. Sometimes God takes you the long way to prepare you for the weight of what's coming. The Israelites could have reached the promised land faster, but God took them through the wilderness to build their faith. Preparation comes before promotion. God never wastes obedience. Every yes you give him is a seed. It may not sprout tomorrow, but it will grow. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Keep sowing in obedience. Your harvest is coming. Some of you have been asking God for a breakthrough, but you haven't yet obeyed the last instruction he gave you. Go back. What was the last thing God told you to do? Forgive, give, step away from something. Until you obey, don't expect the outcome. God moves in order. Obedience is an act of worship. It says, "God, I trust you more than I trust my feelings, my logic, or my fears." When you obey, you place your confidence not in your ability, but in God's sovereignty. That's where miracles happen, in the space between your step and his outcome. Don't compare your obedience journey with someone else's results. What God is doing in your life is tailor-made. Just because someone else got there faster doesn't mean God has forgotten you. Keep obeying. Keep showing up. The outcome is on the way. Obedience requires faith, and faith pleases God. Even if no one else sees your sacrifice, even if the results take time, he sees your heart. And his word promises that those who trust in the Lord will never be put to shame. Some of you are walking in circles, not because God hasn't spoken, but because you haven't moved on what he already said. You're waiting for new instructions while ignoring the last one. But here's the truth. God doesn't give fresh direction to disobedient hearts. You can pray, fast, and cry, but obedience is what activates the next step. Don't let hesitation rob you of what God has already prepared. The promised land doesn't open for the comfortable. It opens for the obedient. The enemy loves to make you question the value of obedience. He whispers, "What if it doesn't work? What if you look foolish? What if nothing changes?" But I came to remind you that obedience is never wasted. Even when it feels like nothing is happening, something is shifting in the spirit. When you obey God, you're not just moving your feet, you're moving mountains. You're stirring angels into motion. You're unlocking things your eyes can't yet see. Sometimes obedience will lead you through the fire before it brings you to the promise. And that's okay, because fire doesn't destroy the obedient, it refines them. God uses the furnace to burn off fear, doubt, pride, and everything that would block your next level. When you obey, you give God permission to shape your future. So don't fear the fire. Trust the one who walks in it with you. He's not just the God of the outcome. He's the God of every step. So today, stop worrying about how it will all work out. That's God's job. Your job is to say yes. Your job is to trust. Your job is to obey, even when you're unsure, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. Because obedience births destiny. Obedience is your job. Outcome is God's. Rest in that truth. Walk in that truth. Obey boldly, trust deeply, and watch what God will do. He's never failed, and He won't start now. The outcome may not look like what you expected, but if it's God's, it will always be greater. If this message spoke to your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a word that could build your faith. God is not done with you yet. Keep trusting, keep obeying, and keep moving forward.